Hello and welcome to First Dollar Academy. I'm your host, Jeremy Mohue. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you've listened to past episodes, I can't express how grateful I am that you've taken the time to listen to the thing that I've been creating. If you have, I'd love to hear from you. Please go to jeremymohue.substack.com and shoot me a note. I'd love to hear what you think of all the episodes so far. First Dollar Academy was created as a passion project to learn more about how to build a viable business. I also had the realization that there's so many people out there that had some of the same questions I had, and it might be wise of me to record some of these conversations. I've had such a fun time speaking with people from different industries and diverse backgrounds to figure out and learn how they approach entrepreneurship. My next guest and I have so much in common, and I can't wait for you to hear what she's working on and the thing that she's so passionate about. Kaitlyn Hurley is the co-founder of Bracketology.tv, the number one fantasy app for reality television. The idea started as a way to engage her friends while they watch some of the shows they loved and has grown into a full-fledged business that's raising capital to expand. Listen to how Kaitlyn and her co-founders are taking their passion and turning it into a growing business that is gaining some of the attention of some of your favorite networks. Kaitlyn Hurley, welcome to First
Hello.
Dollar Academy. How are you?
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to speak with you today. I think your business and what you guys have built is just all based around fun, right? And your experiences with that. For those people who are being introduced to you for the first time, tell them a little bit about yourself. I know you came from California, and just tell them a little bit about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually grew up in Kansas City, Missouri before I made the move out to Los Angeles for college, stayed out there for a few years, and then moved to Chicago back in 2017. So I've been here in Chicago, living my best life since then.
Good deal. So you went to a school at UCLA, and
Yes.
you graduated, and you got a job pretty much immediately after you graduated. And tell me a little bit about that experience and how it shaped you to become like a co-founder today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I, like many recent college grads, graduated with a degree in political science that I then immediately realized was not applicable to anything. And I really was just on the hunt for kind of any job that I could find at the time in 2014. And I found a digital marketing agency that had a ping pong table and let dogs in the office. And, it was all the right things at the time. And I was like, yes, this is for me. And so I got hired to start doing digital marketing, and that's kind of where I grew my career. I was at the agency for a little over 9 years, working full time in kind of a bunch of different roles, really managing client campaigns on kind of the hands-on keyboard side, running digital campaigns. And then I started managing budgets and creating kind of the liaison between the client team and the agency team. And then all the while, I was kind of building what is now bracketology.
Right. Yeah. So I'm so glad you transitioned to that. You are like, and my wife is as well, and I know so many people in my friend groups that are kind of obsessed with reality TV. Tell us about
Yes.
tell us how that obsession. I looked up that you started building predecessor and then batch TV. Like, tell us about like the early days, like how you parlayed your obsession of reality TV to like actual business.
Yes, absolutely. So I am currently the co-founder of Bracketology, which is a fantasy sports platform for reality TV. So we cover a wide variety of reality TV shows, but it really all started with my obsession with the Bachelor franchise. Ever since I was in high school, I was watching The Bachelor on Monday nights, and in college, I think that being surrounded by a bunch of friends sitting in the sorority house with 40 other girls watching The Bachelor was one of my favorite parts of the week. And that's kind of where our company started. It didn't necessarily start off as a company. It really just started out as a passion project. A few friends and I loved creating this kind of fantasy game that we were playing. Everyone was making picks, texting them. We were scoring in an Excel spreadsheet. It was very low tech, but it was very, very heated and exciting. And so I think that really just took something that we were all really passionate about and turned kind of gamified it. And I'm a big fantasy sports player as well, love fantasy football. And so just kind of creating a merge between the excitement of fantasy football and the investment we had in reality TV and married it together. And that kind of became Bracketology.
It's so interesting, right? Because sometimes people they have like a passion, and but they don't know how to turn it into a business. What did you see about like the growing gaming industry of like fantasy sports? I'm sure that was played a major role into the creation of bracketology. How did you like? Where did you see the connection? Like, what gave you the idea to kind of start on that?
Yeah, I think that there was just the same level of engagement and passion that people had for sports. I was seeing that that existed for reality TV as well, but there was really nothing to gamify it the way that they had with sports. And so I think identifying that there was this same motivation there for the reality TV fans, but not something to service that motivation was kind of the initial spark of it. Is how do we take this thing that's clearly working and taking off and blowing up for this community that I'm a part of and do the same thing for another community that I'm a part of?
So you were building that as kind of a side project while you were working your full time job. Tell me a little bit about the transition, right? So you move out to Chicago, you make this like crazy leap to determine, okay, I'm gonna stop working at my job to like pursue this full time. What were some of the triggers that like you had to see for you to even be able to make that decision?
Yeah, so I really didn't turn what was originally Batch Bracket, our kind of bachelor only project, into what is now Bracketology until I met my current co-founders when I moved to Chicago. So I met them in 2019, and they really were the first ones that said, hey, like this could be more than just a passion project. I was never really in it to say, let's create this company that's going to make a bunch of money, that's going to really grow. I just loved building something really cool that I knew a lot of people loved and were playing regularly. And so when I kind of met them, they instilled that drive of, hey, how big could we make this? And that was the first time I really started thinking, wow, this could really be something, a sustainable business, not just this fun thing that I do with my friends. And so once I partnered up with my co-founders, that's really when we were able to start saying, what will it take to really make this huge? And our CEO, Jonah, is actually the one that went full time first. He was actually full time by himself for almost 2 years while I was doing kind of double duty, working during the day and then working on bracketology at night. And I was actually able to go full time last October, which was a huge leap. It's terrifying to leave kind of the job security and a full time job of at a company that I really loved. And really, for me, I wasn't comfortable going full time until we got our first initial round of funding. And I think that that's obviously different for every person. But I think for me, being able to know that I didn't want to go full time until I was confident that me going full time wouldn't just kind of crush all of the runway that we had. I wanted us to feel like we were in a spot where this was a legitimate business and we had gotten enough money to really launch our app. And that was kind of the big milestone for me of how I knew it was time was we had the money to make an app. It's go time. Let's hit the ground running.
So you mentioned Jonah. I saw that Jonah's like he was a hot dog guy at Wrigley Field. How did you guys meet, and how did you guys determine like you were a good fit in terms of co-founders?
Great question. So yes, Jonah sells hot dogs and beer at Wrigley Field. He has been a vendor there for 10 years and he still does that on the side. He's very passionate about it and he creates content about it as well, which is hilarious and really cool. Um, Jonah was I met we have three co-founders and Jonah's best friend since childhood. Dave is our third co-founder, and that's actually who I met at an 1871 event here in Chicago, so a networking event. Kind of told them about the project, and they were the ones that were really excited about the expansion. Um, and Jonah's just wonderful. I think that we are such a good pair together. He's very much the hype man for everything. I think that he really, Jonah walks into a room and lights it up. I think he can make friends instantly. And he's also the person that's like, yeah, we can do that. Easy. Like, let's make it happen. He's kind of a visionary in that way, and I really respect it. And then I think I came in, with a lot of the boardroom skills and a lot of the corporate experience that I had had working in my previous roles. And so we kind of melded together and we level each other out. And I think it's just so important that we do get along because we spend so much time together. We kind of are constantly talking. It never stops really. And so I just feel lucky to have someone that wants to build the same thing that I do, has the same vision that I do, but can bring different strengths to the table.
Obviously, you meet Jonah, you come out full time. I guess your official title is co-founder, chief revenue officer, which is a very interesting title as you guys kind of still try to gain some more funding in your early stage rounds. What has that experience been like, and like, did you learn on the job, or how have you figured out how to like raise money and like generate revenue for the company?
Billion% learned on the job. I am an avid reader, and so I read a lot of books from the start. I just kind of accumulated every list of book that you could think of and learned that way. I think that it really is just using resources as well. There are so many people that have stepped up to help and support us who have been through the process and who have been willing to kind of share their advice, their do's and don'ts. And we've just been so fortunate. And, now I think even this week, I've had 2 calls with other founders who are at an earlier stage than we are. Just trying to pass on that knowledge, right? Trying to help them as well, because I think as a founder, there's so much to learn and you can't know everything from the start. And so it's just the experience teaches you so much, and there's so much that you can pay forward to other people. So we benefited from that a lot, and so now we're kind of trying to pass it on.
That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. I think the community that you guys have in Chicago is really awesome. Speaking with Alex and my buddy Mike and all the different places you guys can go to learn, I think it's really great. I wanted to ask you specifically around the safe cap that you guys put on the business, 3.6 million. How do you even determine that number? And then as you think about, continuing to generate funding to extend your runway, how will you allocate those dollars? Do you even know until you get it, or do you typically have a plan for it, pre-fund?
Yeah, so we actually did our first fundraise back in June of 2022. We did our friends and family crowdfund, and that was a really, really awesome experience for us because it really showed how much support that we had. We raised $160,000 in that friends and family round, and we actually didn't set terms for that safe. We left the terms open-ended and really just kind of told them, we're not setting these yet, but once we get our first term sheet, you'll adopt those terms. And I think that we were really grateful because at the time we had no idea what to set our valuation at. And so it wasn't actually until we started talking to our first institutional investor, they provided a lot of input on where we could come in at that kind of first initial valuation. And so that was kind of how we set our first term sheet. And we actually had 2 term sheets signed in September of 2023. And that was kind of our first real, like, wow, we have a valuation that someone that isn't us has solidified. And so I think that gave us a starting point. And then for this most recent round, we raised that before we had our mobile app, and our mobile app went live in January. And so that was allowed us to kind of confidently raise that valuation a little bit for this current round. So that's kind of how we mapped those out. For future, I think we are looking to raise a much larger round in the early 2025. And so that is kind of where we are looking to increase that overall valuation and raise a much larger seed round. And in terms of fundraising for that and just kind of money allocation, we've really built out a pretty comprehensive business model of how we get to that real revenue number. You know, we've been so focused on user growth and we've seen these kind of year over year, month over month growth numbers that we're really proud of. So now it really turns to how do we build something that's going to allow us to start returning revenue, not only to help fuel the company even more, but also to eventually, you know, show return to those investors that are believing in us.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so glad you transitioned over to the launch. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about the actual application. The last kind of funding question I have for you is just the change in the market, right? So we know like 2023 at the end of 2023 and 2024 has been a very strange time with both, you know, venture capital and just the economy in general. Like technically we're doing well, but we don't really know. People are not giving money to specific things anymore.
Right.
Have you seen a general shift in that? Like, how have you guys kind of, adjusted, I guess, to the market conditions?
Yeah, I think that we've definitely seen it. And I think talking to founder friends who have actively raised over the last year, I think they've definitely seen it as well. We've kind of been able to tiptoe our way around it for the last year because we did make the most of kind of that funding that we got at the end of last year. And that's really been able to extend our runway kind of through this entire turbulent period. That being said, I do think that there is, you know, there's market volatility, et cetera, but none of it really changes where you are building your company, right? Like we aren't just taking money because it's available and we aren't not taking money because it's hard to get, right? It doesn't necessarily change the trajectory of our business or our goals. And so I think that that's really been our focus hasn't changed, our plan hasn't changed. We're about to start this fundraising process, and I don't think that we're really thinking about the market factors. We just need to find investors that believe in the vision, and it doesn't matter what else is happening on the outside.
And that's a great attitude to have, right? Because you're trying to build something, and you got to focus in on the business as opposed to some of the ancillary things. So moving on to the product, I'm a huge avid fantasy football fanatic myself. There's so many different elements in these apps nowadays, and you kind of expect a certain level of technology when you log in. I'm so curious to hear about kind of that first prototype and what that looked like, and how you guys kind of gained users, and then eventually launched the official app in January.
Yeah, absolutely. So previously we had a web app only. So we had just a web experience. We didn't have a mobile app. And it was definitely what I would consider an MVP. It worked. The functionality was there. The idea was really cool. But there were a lot of just kind of user improvements that we wanted to make. However, our team actually doesn't have a technical co-founder on it. So we don't actually have the ability to stay up late and code something or fix something. It really has been a partnership with offshore development teams to build, which we've had a really wonderful experience doing. But it does mean that we have to be careful adding features, making changes, etc., because we are paying for those changes. So I think that it's both a blessing and a curse because I think it has prevented us from feature bloat and, investing all of these dev resources into building something people don't want because we just don't have the resources to do that. But it has made it more difficult, I would say, to kind of expand and update the app. So we were kind of at a point last year where we were at a precipice where we knew that if we got a mobile app, we could expand, and we knew that we had something that people wanted to play. People had been begging us for a mobile app, and we were like, oh, we know we'd love to have one, but we don't have the capital to build one. But then we were like, but we can't raise capital if we don't have an app. And so we were kind of really in like a hard place. And at the same time, we actually found a development firm that was willing to invest $150,000 in the form of development in exchange for equity last year. And so they kind of came in and believed in the product, believed in the idea, and said, okay, we'll build it for equity. And that was kind of our incredible shining light because it allowed us to build the app, get it out, and we launched in January. So now we have the mobile product that we're really proud of. We took the web app down for a little bit for maintenance to make it match the experience on the mobile app, but the web app is also coming up again in August. So we'll have a parallel path web mobile experience, and we're really excited.
Has that like supercharged your user base with the launch?
Definitely, yes. We've had about 80,000 downloads since January when we launched. We're up. I think we hit the total number of new users that we had all of last year in June of this year. So we're, doubling, tripling our show season over season numbers. Feedback has been really positive, and we're kind of continuing to roll out additional features as we build them. So it's been incredible to have. It was always a dream come true for us to have an app. And so, um, that's always been the dream. So it was really, really exciting. And yeah, growth has been really great this year, and we just want to keep it going.
That's great to hear. That's awesome. And so you have to kind of educate me here. So I know about the reality TV shows. I don't watch them that often. I do know that there are always shows popping up. People are always
Mhm.
coming and going. The popularity around shows change. So how do you kind of match the things that are going on Bravo or ABC to kind of make sure that you're also accounting for that in your app?
Yeah, I mean, I think that so we started with just the Bachelor franchise, and that was really interesting because anyone that follows The Bachelor knows that it's gone through quite a turbulent last 5 years, I would say. It was at its peak, and then I think it plummeted pretty abruptly to its lowest point, and now it's climbing back up. And so one of the things that bracketology has allowed us to do has been to diversify outside of one specific franchise or show. We're now offering 16 different shows. And we actually built our admin panel of the new app to allow us to create a new show at the click of a button. So we don't have that technical team, but we've created it so that if we decide, hey, the new season of Love is Blind is going to be huge, we need an app, we need a game for it, we create a game for it and we can start promoting it. And so that's been really nice. I think it helps that I'm a big fan. Jonah and I watch all of these shows. I mean, Jonah's still the one that's hand scoring every episode as we watch it. So I think that helps because we're pretty in tune with what's popular, right? We know what people are looking forward to. We're watching the shows, even if they aren't on the app yet. We're launching the challenge next month, and that's kind of been a show that I've always watched, but we didn't have on the app, and now we do. So I think it's a lot of just being in tune, and it's why bracketology has been so successful up to this point is that it was created by fans for fans. And so I think you can sense that authenticity as you play. We really want to create something that's fun for people, that's engaging, that matches the tone of the different shows we're offering gameplay for. And so, I think we're unafraid to pull out of a show that loses popularity, and we're really eager to launch more shows that are coming up. And with reality TV just absolutely booming with a number of new shows that are being created, we're excited about the possibility of continuing to add more and more onto the platform.
And you mentioned it, right? Like you love this thing, so it is your baby, and you're always watching it. And I think it's interesting that you're always like kind of trying to consider what the user wants. Is there a mechanism in which you are connecting with your platform users? Like how are you essentially like getting that feedback and making sure that like whatever you're thinking is what they're thinking as well?
Yeah, totally. So we're very active on social. We're always kind of like following and commenting and DMing and talking with both the contestants on the shows and the people that are watching it and all the most popular podcasts for each show. So I think we have a pretty strong tab on at least what's being said culturally. But then I think we also have created a lot of opportunities for our users to give feedback to us as well, whether that be through really regular user surveys that kind of ask them if you could have anything in the app that it doesn't offer, what would it be? Those kind of open-ended questions that aren't us saying, hey, here's a feature, do you like it? Because they're always going to say yes, right? Like you make a feature, people are like, cool. even if they aren't going to use it. And so I think leaving it open ended and saying, we're here, we're listening. It's just Jonah and me full time, which I think a lot of people hear that and they're like, wait, it's just you? Like you don't work for, I'm like, no, it's our company. I think it is that element of personal where we read every single email that comes in, every single DM, every single survey response, and we genuinely are trying to act on them to make the product better. So it's always just been really important to me. I don't want to do this anymore, honestly, if our product isn't something that people want to play or think is cool. That's kind of always been the why for me, has been building something that people love and that becomes a part of their life. And so I think in order to do that, you just have to know who the audience is and care a lot about what they think.
That's really important, right? If people don't like it, they won't use it, and you won't have an app. So I'm gonna ask you a really tough question. I don't know if you've thought of the answer yet, or how you're kind of dealing with it. So to give you a little bit of context, as I was mentioning earlier, I'm an avid fantasy football player. I know that you know when we started all those years ago in our little college dorm room, we were just like, come with $20, right? That's how you get your passcode to log in, and that's how we'll play. And based on where you finish in the season, that's how much money you'll end up getting. Um, and it's taken so long. I feel like, especially with all the laws and regulations in the country, to get a lot of these daily fantasy and kind of sports betting apps up and running, and a lot of states still don't have it. And so I'm so curious on if you're thinking down the road that's what you all want to eventually get to, or if there's another way that you're thinking about how you're going to generate revenue.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So paid daily fantasy contests are definitely on the roadmap for us. I think that there's just such an eagerness to be able to do that. And we know that people are doing it for our leagues, not through our app, to be clear. But, we see the Instagrams of people saying, Venmo me this much money. Here's the pot for our bachelor pool. We know people want to bet on it. I think that some of the difficulties that we'll have outside of regulation is really just, you can't bet on recorded TV, pre-recorded television. There's always spoilers out there that someone could dig up. But there's a lot of live reality TV as well. We're in Big Brother season right now, and every Thursday the episode is live. So there's really nothing stopping us from eventually getting to a point where you could bet on who's going to win that week and who's going to beat HOH, who's going to win the power of veto. You can bet on these things that are happening live. And so I think that that's absolutely on the roadmap for us. But yes, there's a lot of legal diligence that has to go into it. Um, and so you need money for legal diligence. But it's definitely something that we see, building a product that's always going to be free to play. I think that's always been really important to us, is letting our users play for free, but then layering on these optional paid contests as well. I think is going to be the perfect opportunity that'll allow us to continue to gain traction and get users, no matter how excited by the idea of sports betting or fantasy betting that they are.
Yeah, it's always a interesting thing because you go from state to state. Maybe you can bet on fantasy, maybe you can't, and they're still
Right.
jumping through loopholes as well. So it's one of those things that it's eventually going to happen, but it's tough to kind of forecast for. So I want to ask you a specific question about kind of your experience as a co-founder. And I know that you have all this corporate experience, and you bring a wealth of knowledge to your business. What's a couple things that you've learned in this experience that you had no idea about, and maybe that was a big challenge for you in the beginning that you've had to get used to?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously all of the hard skills that I had no idea how to do, all of the fundraising, a lot of the just kind of general business building and legal stuff that we've had to learn. But I think for me, one of the most difficult things as I transitioned from a corporate role into kind of an entrepreneurial role is just the lack of structure. I think that was something that my first week at Bracketology, I went from, a jam-packed corporate schedule where I woke up and I was grinding from 8 to, whenever my call schedule ended on these recurring calls, I was always busy. My whole calendar's blocked, triple booked. That was how I lived. And I opened my calendar the first Monday that I started working full time for our startup. And I was like, what do I do? Right? Like, what do I do? My calendar is empty. I have no. And so I think it took me, honestly, a couple of weeks before I like got in the groove and figured out that so much about startup life and entrepreneurship is just taking the next step. And I think that the hardest thing is knowing that you could step in 40 different directions and all of them kind of go where you want to go, but one of them's going to get you there faster, right? There's so many paths and only one of them's going to be the right one at the moment. And so I think that was kind of one of the biggest things I learned, and one of the largest challenges that I overcame was, how do you prioritize all of these things? How do you pick a North Star metric and make sure that the things you're doing on a day to day are working towards that North Star and you're not getting distracted? I think that has been one of the largest challenges that I've overcome since I went full time.
Yeah, I can imagine if your day is jam packed, working 9, 10 hours a day, and then you start having to plan exactly what it is that you're doing. It can definitely be a challenge. I'm curious to hear about essentially like what you guys are working on now, right? So you talked a lot about the things that are on the roadmap. You have a great partner helping build your app. What are like the day to day things that are going to get you from point A to point B that you're like really focused on at this particular point?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm primarily responsible for user acquisition, and that's been kind of the key focus over the last few months, especially now that we have a product that we're really proud of. We've launched 7 new shows this year that we previously didn't have on the app. And so there's a lot of foundational groundwork that goes into doing that, whether it means creating rules for each of the show that, all of the rules are custom for each show. So making sure that you fully understand the bones of each show. The rules for The Bachelor are all different than Big Brother, than Survivor, than The Challenge, than Amazing Race, than all of these. So really making sure that the rules are fun and funny and like relevant, and someone that's been watching this show for years is like, oh yeah, that's a good rule. I think that takes time, but really just building those relationships, building up all of the marketing and keyword research as well. We haven't spent any money on marketing yet, so all of the user acquisition and the growth and the success that we've had has been done organically through organic social engagement, through SEO, through kind of unpaid partnerships. And so I've been really responsible for a lot of that. And then also really just doing a lot of networking. I think that our largest opportunity for growth and expansion really will come from partnering directly with the networks for these shows. And we actually just signed our very first network partnership about 3 weeks ago. So we're going to be an official fantasy provider for a network for their shows for the fall. So very excited about that. But each day totally changes. It's marketing, it's partnerships, it's biz dev, it's sales, it's graphic design, it's content creation. Really, it's anything that I need to do. Jonah and I kind of look at each other and divide the day and make it happen.
Every day is different. I'm sure as a budding entrepreneur. Really quick in terms of the you just mentioned user acquisition, and I'm so curious because as you're talking, I'm thinking like, so my wife's parents, they really enjoy Survivor, and then
Hmm.
she might watch a different Bravo TV. Could you tell me like the depth of your user base and how you're ensuring that you're giving all the different types of people that like these shows exactly what it is that they need?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's been interesting because when we first started for the Bachelor franchise, the audience is what it is. You can imagine what the Bachelor audience is. It's primarily female. It's very much like early 20s to mid to late 30s was kind of our sweet spot. And then as we started adding additional shows, the demo changed significantly. And so the tone changed a little bit as well because you had to cater to a broader audience. And so I think for us, every time we add a new show, we do a lot of research on the demographics of the viewership of that show, and we get kind of embedded within the culture of that show. At least to the extent where we're like respectful of it, even if we're not a part of it. And I think that's been really a kind of key to the success. We're not able to dive as deeply as we used to. I am in Bachelor Nation, right? And I can't claim that for some of the other shows that we have, but we've put in a lot of work to try to understand and to try to deliver something that they're excited about and that does align with kind of that audience. And so now the platform's much more evenly skewed across gender. The platform's much more age diverse. The more network television shows that we layer in versus the younger kind of like Netflix shows that we layer in all have such wide demographics. But I think that's the beauty of it, right? And I think we see people playing across those groupings as well, whether it's family members playing. I know that we just added MasterChef this season, and my aunt texted me and was like, I love MasterChef. I'm so excited to play, right? And then my little brother saw that we added the challenge and was like, oh, this is great. I love the challenge. And so it's kind of cool to be able to cater to a wider audience and then figure out a way for them to connect, even if they're maybe not watching the same shows, around kind of the shared love of reality TV.
For sure. And it's so funny because like you said, there's so many different types of demos that like these shows, and that could be a challenge, obviously, like making sure that you're catering to everyone. But if you're heading toward your North Star, then I think, ultimately, like you're doing the right thing. So I have two more questions for you. The first is around growth. You obviously and Jonah can't do this by yourselves forever. What's the plan to grow and begin like hiring? What needs to happen within the business for you guys to be able to start doing that? And then when you get to that point, like how will you determine what's a good hire? How will you determine exactly what it is that you need? Things like that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think we'd love to bring on our third co-founder, Dave, as soon as we can, once we have some additional capital. I think that's really just the key for us is we want to spend as much time and money and resources on user acquisition as possible right now. And so I think that's been the key focus. And I come from a media background, so I would love to have $1 million budget to spend to acquire users. Like the number of times I've built a media plan in my head of what I would do to acquire users with money, is a lot. But I think for us, it's really just going to be about being really strategic, staying really scrappy. I think that we've been fortunate that we're both kind of like forever learners. And so we there's a lot of things that a lot of people would outsource because they don't know how to do them. And we instead have kind of committed to learning how to do them and figuring out how to do them ourselves. And I think for now that makes the most sense because it keeps us lean, it keeps our overhead really low, and it gives us more runway to really build what we see as kind of the dream vision of the future. And so I now think once we're able to do this kind of 7-figure seed early next year, that will unlock the opportunity for us to start expanding the team and really taking a look at how we can use our resources and time most efficiently. And so I think that we're close and we're excited to branch out and keep growing. But I also think we want to be really, really smart about it, so that we can stay strategic and keep growing as we see continued success.
Absolutely. So my last question has to do with just you and what you've learned and your journey through this experience. Obviously, you came from, like you said, one job, and now you do like hundreds of jobs. And I'm just so curious to hear, like, what you've learned along this journey and how it shaped you today, like your worldview, and what you would say to people that maybe want to start something that are maybe scared or just don't feel like they know enough or don't have like the necessary resources or funds to start. Like, how would you message like this is actually a really good path, and maybe you'll learn these steps along the way?
Absolutely. I think for me, I built this from the beginning, not with the intention of it being this massive company, but really because it was something that had natural excitement around it. If I would tell people about it and people would ask questions. And I think that's how you can tell that an idea excites someone is when you tell someone and they have follow-up questions. And so I think that if you have something that you've thought of, that you believe in, that you're excited about, and other people get excited when you tell them about it, that's, I think, something that you can pursue. And I don't think that there's necessarily a requirement to dive in heads first and go full time and quit your job right before you have traction. I think that works for some people, and that's amazing. But for me, I did want to know that I had something more secure before I felt confident to do that. And I think that's what allowed us to lay the foundation to be in the spot that we are. Because otherwise, would have been broke in 3 months and would have had to give it up entirely. And so I think there's something to be said for being strategic in that way and building until you feel a point. And I think that it's easier to know that point than you think once you're building. I think there's a point where in my gut, I knew, okay, if we want to take this to where I want it to go, I have to go full time. Like I have to. And so I was very sure, I was nervous, I was terrified, but I was very sure that it was the right thing to do. And so I think that's kind of the advice for anyone that's looking to start or hasn't started yet. And then I think in terms of what I've learned and just continue to learn is that, you never know what kind of opportunity is out there, and you never know what opportunities are going to be the exciting ones. You never really know which door is going to be a yes. There's a quote that I love that is an Emily Dickinson quote that's not knowing when the dawn will come, I open every door. And I think it's just a really special quote that says, say yes to every opportunity possible, explore and chase. And I think as long as they're moving towards that North Star that you talked about, it might seem big, it might seem scary, you might get a lot of no's, and God knows that we've gotten those. But for every, 5 no's, the yeses are that much more sweet. And I think just keeping your mind open, kind of following where things go and not being so rigid and this is exactly what my next month, next 6 months, next year is going to look like, has allowed us to kind of move with the flow of the business. And it's just, taken us to where we are now.
Where can people find you? Where can people find Bracketology?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Bracketology app is available in your app store for iOS and Android. You can also find it at bracketology.tv. And the web app will be up soon. So we are very excited. Would love to have you if you want to check out our show offerings, or you can email me at Kaitlyn@bracketology.tv and let me know if we don't have a show you want. I'll see if it's on the roadmap.
Well, there you go. Awesome. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for your time. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this thing blows up, and I wish you guys the best of luck. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
A big thank you to Kaitlyn Hurley for joining me on today's podcast. It's a reminder that you can build a business that you actually love and want to participate in. I got so excited speaking with Kaitlyn that I've downloaded my own profile on bracketology.tv. You can find DustyBoy89 and invite me to your league. I'd love to get in on the action. That's DustyBoy89. Thank you again for listening to today's episode, and please like and subscribe if you're enjoying the content that you're hearing. See you next time.